Hello and welcome to the first video in the Tes Careers Clinic series International Edition. I'm Grania Hallahan and I'm here to walk you through all your international teaching career related questions and get some answers from international teachers and school leaders who are going to share their experiences with us. Today's video is going to be about planning your international teaching career. And we're going to talk about the different approaches a teacher can take when planning out where their international teaching career is going to go next. So we're thinking about the stage before you hit the jobs pages on Tes, where you're just feeling like you want to move on and you're starting to think about the practicalities of leaving. The thing about international teaching is that your movements can't always have the same spontaneity that you might have had when you were living in the UK. For starters, the differences in your teaching contracts are likely to restrict you to moving only at certain times. Also, if your next school sees you changing countries or even continents, you have to consider the upheaval to your life, and if you have a family, the upheaval that you'll be putting upon them as well. Now, partly thanks to the booming growth in the international schooling, teachers can find that they can grow their career internationally, and the data seems to support this. COBIS had a recent report where it said the majority of incoming teachers were just teachers, that's 70% of them, but a much smaller proportion held responsibilities like head of subject or head of year, just 17%. But when they came home from teaching abroad, they now have there's a much higher percentage that actually have positions of responsibility, 45%, and fewer people just return as teachers, 32%. Now, before you make any decisions about where you should go next, it really benefits to have a think about where you are now. Your CV might be a record of what you've done, but I'd really recommend taking the time to reflect back on what you've taken from each job you've had and each opportunity that you've taken. So, something you might find really helpful is called a SWOT analysis. A SWOT analysis is basically an evaluation tool people can use on themselves. SWOT stands for Strengths, Weaknesses, Opportunities and Threats. Now, it doesn't have to be a hard thing to do, it can be quite simple. Just get an A4 sheet of paper, divide it into 4, and really think about what your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats might be. Now, your strengths might be the subjects you can offer, the different countries that you've taught in, the different syllabuses that you've been able to teach. Your weaknesses might be perhaps gaps in your knowledge or perhaps never having the opportunity to teach A-level. Opportunities might be what's in your school or even in your wider networks, and threats are really things that might be preventing you from achieving your goals. That might be something as simple as a cut to your department budget, or it might be something more complicated like visas that you're entitled to, or your situation that might stop you from going to the school you want to go to. In order to get some further insight into this really important part of your teaching career, we've spoken to an international teacher.
My name is Sarah Cullen and I teach English, Literature and Language in the British Vietnamese International School in Ho Chi Minh City. Usually applications for international schools begin around November and December because there's a great deal of transience in international teaching. They have people let the school know if they're going to be renewing their contract fairly early on in the year. That is something I was not aware of when I decided to teach internationally, and so it was actually around February when I applied, and I was actually very lucky to find a school that still had a position available. That left me with very little time in which to complete the admin that's required for international teaching. You need to run a lot of different tests, you need a full medical examination, you need visa applications and police checks, all of which I had to do in an extremely compressed amount of time. I had to call in a lot of favours, but I did it, I managed it all, and it actually contributed to the whole thing feeling that much more like an adventure. I spoke to a lot of my colleagues who did prepare from November, and they said if anything it began to feel like this idea of a thing that was going to happen as opposed to reality. So when the time to get on the plane actually did come around, it no longer felt real. I would say there's not a problem necessarily with leaving it too late, though you will find your choice a little more limited. I think really considering the different aspects of the culture you'll be moving to, I think international schools value people who have a realistic expectation of what life will be like in the country you'll be moving to, and it also becomes very relevant within the classroom. You'll still teach a British or sometimes American curriculum, but you will need to be making it relevant to the children you teach, and of course they need people who are prepared for the move. There's a high chance that people can go out with the wrong expectations and as a result feel very out of their depth very quickly. So if you haven't been to the country before, which again, unusually was my circumstance, I'd never even visited Vietnam, I asked a lot of people who had, I watched a lot of YouTube videos, I read a lot of blogs, and it meant that I had a very realistic idea of what life would be like there.